Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today I will analyze the complaint filed by Blake Lively against Justin Baldoni. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the incident, then offer my analysis. Blake Ellender Lively was born on August 25, 1987, in Los Angeles, California. Her father was an actor, and her mother was a talent scout. When she was young, she attended acting classes, which were taught by her parents. Blake made her acting debut at the age of 10 when she appeared in the 1998 film Sandman. This movie was directed by her father. While still in high school, Blake was featured in the 2005 movie The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. After graduating from high school, she landed roles in several more movies and was on the TV series Gossip Girl from 2007 to 2012. Many of the movies featuring Blake were not particularly popular, but for the most part, critics liked her acting. In 2010, when working on the 2011 film Green Lantern, Blake met the Canadian actor Ryan Reynolds. The couple married in 2012 and went on to have 4 children. Now moving to the timeline of the incident. When Blake Lively was working on the 2024 film It Ends With Us, she allegedly encountered difficulties with the movie's director, Justin Baldoni. Justin also functioned as her co-star. This led Blake to filing a complaint with the California Civil Rights Department. This type of complaint is often a precursor to a lawsuit. In addition to Justin, the complaint targeted the lead producer, Jamie Heath, the studio, Wayfarer Studios, LLC, and others. Essentially, the complaint could be thought of as having 2 major components: alleged sexual harassment that occurred while filming It Ends With Us, and alleged retaliation after Blake complained about the harassment. Here is a summary of Blake's 80-page complaint. Much of this is paraphrased. It's important to keep in mind that these are only allegations. In 2020, Justin Baldoni started Wayfarer Studios. He and a friend of his named Jamie Heath represented themselves as male feminists on a crusade to destroy toxic masculinity. Wayfarer Studios funded the production of the film It Ends With Us, with Justin playing the character of Ryle Kincaid and Jamie as the lead producer. Blake Lively was cast as the character Lily Bloom, who was Ryle Kincaid's love interest in the movie. Production started in early May 2023. During production, Blake believed the behavior of Justin and Jamie was unprofessional and sexually inappropriate. Several examples were provided in her complaint. During one scene, Justin bit on Blake's lower lip, kissed her more times than planned, and shot the scene more times than required. During a slow dance scene, which did not have any sound being recorded, Justin spoke to Blake out of character as himself. While kissing her neck, he said, "It smells so good." Later, when Blake complained, Justin said, "I'm not even attracted to you." After Blake signed on to the movie based on a draft of the script, Justin added graphic content, including an on-camera orgasm. He said it was important because he and his partner climaxed simultaneously. Justin then asked Blake if she and her husband did the same thing. During a scene where Blake's character Lily was giving birth, Justin said that Blake should simulate full nudity because women give birth naked, and it was not normal for women to remain in hospital gowns while giving birth. Justin and Jamie often spoke about having an addiction to clothing-challenged images. They would constantly hug and touch cast and crew. When Blake objected, they became irritated and cold. Justin told Blake that he could speak to the dead and had spoken to her dead father. Justin called Blake sexy and hot. When she said, "That's not what I'm going for," Justin responded, "I guess I missed the HR meeting." One time when Blake was topless, having body makeup removed, Jamie Heath arrived unannounced at her trailer and demanded to talk to her. Blake agreed, but told Jamie to look away, but he kept staring directly at her. Blake said both Justin and Jamie entered her trailer while she was undressed. In June 2023, production on the film stopped due to the writer's strike and stayed this way for a few months. Before resuming production, Blake asked the studio to resolve the problems that she was having with Justin and Jamie. She requested the studio implement a safety plan which included several items. For example, No one was to show Blake clothing-challenged images of women, no more improvised kissing, no more entering Blake's trailer when she was not wearing clothing, no more comments about Blake's appearance other than in connection with character and scene work. An intimacy coordinator must be present anytime Blake was performing a scene with Justin, and no retaliation. All the parties agreed to Blake's terms. Production of the film resumed in January 2024 and concluded in February. The film was scheduled to be released in August 2024. Blake and other cast members promoted the film in advance of the release, but would not appear with Justin, mostly because of the alleged harassment part. It appeared as though Justin was worried that Blake was going to make her concerns public, which would damage his reputation. He contacted a studio public relations employee named Jennifer Abel and told her that they needed to have a plan. They discussed various ways to explain the allegations. For example, maybe it was because Justin was impulsive and socially awkward. At the end of July 2024, Wayfarer Studios hired a public relations expert named Melissa Nathan to get ahead of the narrative and to mitigate bad press that might come about from Blake making her complaints public. Melissa's company marketed itself as a team of crisis specialists who redefined the rules of reputation management. At this point, again, according to Blake's complaint, Justin, Jennifer, and Melissa perpetrated a retaliation scheme based on social media manipulation. For example, they engaged with social media to amplify negative content about Blake Lively and suppress negative content about Justin Baldoni. Blake would be portrayed as someone who involved her husband, Ryan Reynolds, to create a power imbalance with the studio, and a bully who had a reputation in the film industry. Justin indicated that he wanted Blake to be buried. In messages exchanged between Melissa and Jennifer, Melissa expressed concerns that her company could not write down how they were going to destroy Blake. Referring to Justin, Melissa wrote, quote, "He has to look at it as an information document for us to be armed with, that's all. Imagine if a document saying all the things that he wants ends up in the wrong hands," unquote. I guess Melissa doesn't have to imagine anymore because it happened. Despite these concerns, the social media combat plan moved forward. On August 10, 2024, Melissa told Jennifer the socials were really ramping up. She indicated how it was actually sad because it just shows how people really want to hate on women. A few days later, an article came out in Daily Mail titled, "Is Blake Lively Set to be Canceled?" The subtitle read, "String of hard-to-watch videos that have surfaced following tone-deaf Q&A to promote It Ends With Us could tarnish 36-year-old star's golden Hollywood image for good." Jennifer wrote a message to Melissa that read, "You really outdid yourself with this piece." Melissa responded, "That's why you hired me, right? I'm the best." The social media campaign appeared to be effective. There were many negative articles and comments being made about Blake Lively. Among other things, the comments accused Blake of being a mean girl, a bully, and controlling. As Blake was being ripped apart on social media, Justin was enjoying a golden age. He was held out as a feminist who was fighting for justice. The complaint claimed the impact of this social media retaliation campaign on Blake's life was extreme. She experienced grief, anxiety, fear, trauma, and physical symptoms. It not only affected her, but her husband and her children. After the complaint was filed, an attorney for Wayfarer Studios indicated that the studio did not retaliate against Blake Lively. She was just desperately trying to fix her negative reputation. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. Do I believe that Blake Lively's allegations are true or substantially true? As I mentioned, the complaint is really broken down into two components: harassment during production and retaliation after the movie was completed. I will look at these allegations separately. As far as the harassment, there appear to be witnesses to the bad behavior, at least based on what is in the complaint. Blake had this safety plan created, which contained several exceedingly creepy behaviors on the part of Justin and Jamie. Extremely embarrassing actions that really make them look bad, like nobody would want to work with them if the allegations were true. After Blake made these accusations, the film resumed production. One would think that if the men were innocent, Being presented with a document like that would have been a deal breaker. If the allegations were false, who would want to move forward with an actress who would say such things? Now, it's possible that Blake made all this up and the men were just trying to save the film. Maybe they were attempting to get the job done and move on, get as far away from Blake as possible, put this all behind them. This is an interesting theory. However, in my opinion, I believe Blake was telling the truth about the harassment. The part of the complaint where Justin allegedly invoked his impulsivity and social awkwardness as a potential defense is highly inculpatory. This brings me to the retaliation part of the complaint. Blake's complaint featured several specific examples of retaliation involving social media manipulation, a few of which were supported by messages exchanged between Jennifer Abel and Melissa Nathan. Again, Jennifer worked for Justin's studio, and Melissa was a public relations expert the studio allegedly hired to promote Justin and attack Blake. If all those communications were documented accurately in the complaint, it is difficult to dispute Blake's allegations. Some of the statements really look bad for Justin in his studio. For instance, when Melissa talked about how bad it would be if Justin's plans fell into the wrong hands. Now, that's her opinion and not something that Justin said, but still, it doesn't look too good. There's the sense that these people knew they were doing something wrong. No matter what happened during the film's production, it is reasonable to believe the studio went after Blake on social media. Even if Blake was lying or exaggerating about the harassment during production, retaliation is never allowed. Item number 2, not everybody was impressed by Blake's complaint. Some people thoroughly dislike Blake and view this as her way of trying to repair her reputation. Maybe this was all about revenge, like Blake's reputation had been destroyed and she was powerless to change that, but at least she could take down Justin. I suppose this is possible. One could view this story as a bunch of wealthy people fighting with each other. They are playing a game of who is actually the worst person, yet somehow all of them lost. It is a tie. They are all in the worst category together. It's worth considering that Blake could be arrogant, condescending, and have other negative traits, but Justin could have negative traits as well. Both things could be true at the same time. Item number 3, running under the assumption that at least the retaliation component of the complaint is true. One of the most amazing parts of this story is how effective the social media campaign was against Blake. She was not really in the news that much before August 2024. She was a reasonably popular actress, but not a person who people were thinking about every day. After the social media warfare, Blake was public enemy number 1. All of a sudden, she was a bad actress, a monster, a bully, a person who took over the production of the movie, an actress who relied on her powerful husband to get her way. There were negative stories and comments everywhere. All it takes to destroy a person's reputation, apparently, is to hire a PR expert to create and manipulate content on social media. Something else that strikes me as interesting on this point is how people make a living doing this. Presumably, they had lofty or noble career plans at one time, yet they ended up attacking an actress on social media. This is what qualifies as a dignified career. This is what they want to do for a living. Some of the people in this story need to reevaluate their life choices. Item number 4, what do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Justin Baldoni and Jamie Heath appeared to have some boundary problems, although Justin appeared to be much worse. He was dazzled by Blake Lively being in his movie. Maybe he was overwhelmingly attracted to her. This expressed through repeated boundary violations, which made Blake uncomfortable. She could have just dropped out of the movie, but she liked the project and wanted to salvage it. Blake made reasonable demands, which did appear to have an impact on the production. The film resumed production and concluded without further incident. After being left out of promotional appearances, Justin Baldoni became nervous. He had built his reputation based on this idea that he was a male feminist. If Blake made her allegations public, Justin's reputation would have been destroyed. Furthermore, he may have been angry that she complained in the first place. Justin decided that he wanted to protect himself and get revenge. He had a social media campaign launched against Blake, but it worked too well. It was painfully obvious the content was being manipulated. which led to Blake uncovering the plot, filing the complaint, and exposing Justin's creepy behavior. The film It Ends With Us was supposed to promote Justin's role as a champion to women everywhere. He was a hero who selflessly dedicated his life to equality and justice. Ultimately, it did not turn out that way for him. Justin may have trouble finding female co-stars for future projects. The sequel to his film should be titled It Ends With Restraining Orders. As I mentioned in the complaint, Justin said that he could speak to the dead. This skill might come in handy. It might be the only way he can now communicate with his career. Those are my thoughts on the complaint filed by Blake Lively against Justin Baldoni. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. As someone who makes a lot of videos, it stands to reason that I'm always looking for interesting stories to cover. This includes recent events. In August of 2024, I noticed that Blake Lively was in the news all of a sudden. Based on the content of the stories, Blake appeared to be a little bit arrogant, maybe a bit condescending, but it really wasn't the end of the world. There was no one big definitive action that had occurred. There was no one behavior that somebody could latch onto and say, this really should be a big story. I also thought there weren't enough credible sources for me to move forward with the story, so I let it go. I moved on to the next story and didn't really think about it too much. I didn't know this was part of some social media campaign to destroy Blake Lively, but I did know that it was suspicious. It just didn't look right to me. A lot of the stories seemed underwhelming, and the comments were really overly negative, almost like somebody had some type of personal beef with Blake, like they were going after her. This could have been part of the social media campaign launched by Justin Baldoni. Of course, again, I didn't know that, but it seemed obvious something was going on. This really stresses how important it is to look at the sources of information when evaluating a story. Random comments don't really mean anything. Just because a lot of people hate somebody doesn't mean that there's a story there. It is critical to analyze the actual evidence. And in this case, there wasn't much evidence being presented, and what was being presented did not seem credible. This had all the markings of some type of manufactured hate, manufactured animosity. People were going after Blake, but the reason why they were going after her really wasn't clear. This case demonstrates how easily certain members of the public can be swayed by these stories they read on social media and in other places. Like they see these stories and these comments and they think, oh, this must be something to worry about. I should now attack this person or that person. I should now hate this person or that person. It's really pretty scary. People don't really always demonstrate good critical thinking skills. It's almost like they're just waiting to be enraged at the next topic that social media puts in front of them. Like they're not really thinking for themselves. They're just a tool of this huge social media machine. The lesson learned here is that just because stories are displayed on a screen does not make them true. People should never abandon their critical thinking skills.